thank you guys for coming to the private practice workshop. In the next hour, I'm hoping to try to answer whatever questions you have and also hopefully give you a few tools and tips of kind of what to think about as you're thinking about going into private practice, some of the pitfalls that I have experienced, and just some general advice based off of what I've learned at national conferences and talking with other people in private practice and all that good stuff. So real quick, my name is Melissa. I graduated from this program in May, actually, so very recent grad. I've been in the mental health field for about 11 years. I recently started working over at Ambrose Health Center also as a kind of a supplemental to my private practice while I'm getting up and running. So we'll touch base a little bit more about being nimble when you have this type of profession and having to move around a bit. So, but I want to start with a small activity, and just if you can turn to kind of the person next to you and just, you know, you're here because you have a vision of what you want to do, and that vision includes possibly doing a private practice, which comes with a ton of creative energy behind it to really kind of think of what does your future look like. So just with the person next to you, think about, you know, who do you want to work with and where do you want it to happen? Are you thinking big city, out in the country, tiny little town? What's it going to look like for you? So go ahead and talk with the person next to you just for a couple of minutes, just to kind of get your brain moving in that direction. So we think about kind of what the ideal future looks like. You know, is it going to be just kind of your typical counseling room? Are you going to have pet therapy? Are you going to be in a big city? Are you going to be out in the woods doing wilderness therapy? I mean, there's every single color, shape, and form that you can think of. And it's important to kind of have that vision because that's where you're going to direct your energy towards, right? You have to know where it is that you're going towards. And one of the big things about private practice is that it's really important, especially if you're working in a city or a place that already has a lot of established counselors available, is that you have a specialty. Because once you specialize and then you know what type of clients you're trying to bring in, which is going to direct where your marketing efforts are going to go. It's going to direct how you communicate with other therapists and talk to them about who you see, and start making those connections, offering workshops, getting out in front so that people know who to send your way, right? So with me, if I'm working a lot with couples and sex work, you know, people who come into a traditional therapist who might not be as savvy on, you know, working to revitalize sex life, they might say, you know, I have a therapist that I could refer to you who I think would be really great. And so getting out in front of that is important for you to know as well, because you're going to want to think about who is my ideal client and where do they go before they go to me, right? And that's where you want to start looking at, this is the place where you start really hammering your marketing efforts. So there's a little worksheet that I did at one of the national conferences I went to, and I'll give each of you two so that if you want to kind of write on one, you have a blank one then for later. So these are some of the things that you'll want to think about when you're thinking about, okay, so I'm going to open a private practice. I'm going to guess that many of you aren't going to be in a town of 200 where you're the only therapist around, right? Unless that is your plan. If you want to do a northern exposure type thing where you're the only doc in the tri-state area, or in the giant wilderness, then kudos to you. You'll have a ready referral source. But for most of us who will be somewhere where there's already a few established counselors, this is where these kind of ideal clients come in. So, you know, are you going to work with clients who speak 2 languages? You know, are you fluent in another language? That'll help a lot, and that's information you'll want to get out right in front. Certain nationalities, do you want to work with the LGBTQ population? Do they have serious hobbies that you want to tap into? So like the clients that I work with who are really into like BDSM kink stuff, that's a serious hobby. And it's a very underserved hobby that people don't understand. So if you want to work with athletes and that's their serious leisure, serious hobby is their marathon runners, you know, then that's something too that comes with sometimes very unique challenges to the adult athlete or to the student athlete. And so thinking about all these different things. So as we're going through, kind of think about what your specifics are of who your ideal client will be. And know that no matter how much you push for specialization, you will always get vanilla clients. You will always get your average Joe who comes in with depression or anxiety, who just really needs to talk to a good therapist. So while specialization is, I think, key for your marketing efforts and for referral sources, it is not going to be the only thing you do. So again, are you working with vets? Are you working with kids? Are you working with grief work? These are all things too where you're going to market very differently if you're going to be working with the veterans than you would if you were dealing with hospice end-of-life types of situations. So thinking a bit about, you're going into private practice because something about it really moves you, right? Whether it's being able to set your own times, being able to see the clients you want to see, being able to use modalities that you might be restricted to otherwise. There's going to be things that you want to put into place. And yet, we need to think about, are you the type of person who needs accountability? If you are in a private practice and you're the only person and you're not working in a suite with other therapists, or you're not in a group that's going to be nailing down, like we have certain meetings at this time of day and we have this number of supervision all the time, do you need that accountability, or can you do all of these things on your own, self-motivated? And that goes with, do you need a structure or a team? Are you self-directed, motivated? Can you schmooze and network? A lot of us are introverts. I am a huge introvert. You would not know it by how I act. And that takes a lot of work, and it has taken about 10 years of training to get me out in front of people. But being able to kind of do that networking, going into large groups of people that you don't know, and being able to introduce yourself and say, this is what I do, and have confidence behind it, and be able to say, I'm highly trained, I've been working with this population, here's where I'm starting out, whatever you need to do. But getting those business cards in the right hands and vice versa. You always want to know who's in your area too, because you'll be referring out as well. You won't always get to keep everyone who comes in your door. And finally, are you excited about being a business owner? Private practice is a business from beginning to end. There's no getting around it. You're going to be crunching numbers, you're going to be filing weird taxes, and you're going to have write-offs. So part of that, like I say, when you're doing that schmoozing, is really owning who you are, knowing that you have this education, and so you're working towards licensure, whether that's as an MFT or an LPC, any number of other licenses you might be pursuing beyond this. Association membership, for me, I identify strongly as a marriage and family therapist. I am an MFT through and through. However, I'm still going for dual license because I recognize the power that comes with having multiple options. Sometimes that has to do with insurance coverage and other benefits that might come with that. But being able to say, I'm a clinical fellow in the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, that opens a few doors. Being able to say, I'm a certified sex therapist, that's going to open doors. So having an association membership that you can show, usually to other clinicians are going to be the ones who look at that. Your clients aren't going to care if you're a member of the ACA, but other therapists might want to know that information. Having kind of your personal elevator story, again, goes with that marketing piece. Being able to do a quick 3-minute, hi, my name is Melissa. I'm a recent graduate of an accredited program, and I'm working towards my licensure right now. I've done 800 hours with people involved in the kink and poly community. I'm very interested in working with people's sexuality, and so I would love to be able to work a little bit more with you and hear your story. If you have clients who are, experimenting with their sexuality or doing some sort of new venture into alternative lifestyles, and you feel uncomfortable working with them, I would love to be able to consult with you or be a referral source for you. Just bam, quick. Something that they'll remember. And here's my card. And branding comes along with that too. And part of thinking about your brand is not only what type of therapist are you, but thinking about how will that brand be demonstrated through your waiting room, in your office, and the way that you create your website. You know, if you are branding yourself as a very polished professional therapist, you don't want your waiting room to be full of curbside finds, right? You're gonna wanna spend that additional amount of money to get your waiting room and your office filled with furniture that looks nice and everything that kind of says, I am a classy professional. You know, if you are a funky professional, you want everything, you know, big bubbles and here's big bean bags and all that, like, own it. Whatever you decide to put out there into the world, own it and use it. Expertise, again, kind of comes with that personal elevator story. What do you have really great knowledge in? And don't limit it to just, you know, I'm a CBT therapist who works with adolescents. You know, bring in what were your interests as you were growing up? What volunteer positions have you done? How much experience do you have in this certain realm? Because it's not just what you've learned in the class and what you've done in practicum and what you'll be doing in internship. It's the whole story of you, and it's important to keep that in mind that, you know, even though I haven't done a lot of work with pet grief, I'm an expert at it. Like, I know pet grief. I have been through it personally a million times. I've been there for friends and family as they've lost pets. I've done extensive reading on it. I'm comfortable with it. So I go ahead and put that out there, that that's something that I'm interested in working with and that I am here for. So. Private practice pros, lots of good stuff, which we've touched on. Like having that sense of creativity and flexibility with your schedule, with who you want to see. So, you know, for a few people, it might be 10 clients a week. If your rates are enough to sustain that, or you're on insurance panels that will reimburse at a high enough level that you can sustain that, a couple hours a day, 5 days a week, there's your 10 clients. You know, or maybe you're gonna stack them, so you work a day and a half and that's it. So other people will go up to 25 clients a week, and so they really are taking on more of a full caseload where they need that 40 hours to fit in one place or another. But maybe you take every Friday off. Maybe you work a few hours on Saturday mornings. So it's all up to you. It's completely up to you. And again, I say it's completely up to you, and yet it is also somewhat limited by wherever you get an office. If the building allows you to be in there late at night, if it's a building where it feels secure to have single female clients coming in at 9 o'clock at night. If you're in a sketchier neighborhood, you might not want to keep those hours for safety reasons. So these are other things to think about. The earning potential, we'll get a little bit more into that later. But again, you can set a number of sessions. Is it 5? Is it 25? You are the boss, so those unilateral changes are really easy to make because you're only one affected by it. And there are tax advantages. So, you know, you use a laptop, deduct it. You buy stuff for your office, you deduct it. You travel to a conference, you deduct it. You go out to work, or you go out to lunch with some of those network people that you want to get to know, which is a great opportunity, you deduct half of it. So, and there are challenges. So there's, again, the isolation. If you're doing this kind of from your own office, either from home or maybe it's above the chocolate shop or something, there is that sense of isolation. There are no benefits. Unless you have a partner who provides benefits to you, you need to take into account how much are you going to be spending every month, you know, through the marketplace, getting health care, or are you just setting aside a certain amount every month so that in a case of emergency. There's the financial risk, of course. You're putting out a lot of money at the beginning to secure a spot, to furnish it, to get all of your services up and running, and it takes a while to kind of recuperate those costs. Paying for supervision is something that you'll need to do when you're in a private practice. It's rare to find a supervisor who will do it for free when you're running your own practice. So knowing that that's going to be a built-in cost for an MFT, you need an hour of supervision per 10 hours of clients. So if your supervisor is going to charge you $100 for an hour of supervision, you have to keep in mind then that $10 of every single session is going towards supervision, so it's going to cut into your bottom line. And you don't get any paid time off, so you'll want to budget for that as well. So business costs, are never sexy and incredibly important to have nailed down at the start. Thinking about, so liability insurance is going to protect your practice and protect you if you get sued by a client. Your association is probably going to be the best place to buy your liability insurance. They have it really cheap, so either joining American Counseling Association or American Association for Marriage and Family Therapists. They will provide liability insurance at a really good cost. It's typically cheaper than, between paying the membership and the liability is cheaper than going out and buying it on your own. So that insures your practice and you as a person. General liability protects your office. If someone trips on their way into your room and breaks an ankle, general kicks in for that. And then usually you can bundle that too with your professional organization. Again, thinking about how much you're going to be paying in for your own health insurance and any type of retirement planning. You don't have an employer doing that for you now. Paying for a tax accountant if you feel like that's something that you don't want to tackle on your own. Also accounting for people who are no-shows, slow seasons. Everyone I talk to in private practice says August is basically buy month. Like you're not going to make a lot. People aren't coming in. It's a good time to take your own vacation. So thinking about slow seasons and on the flip side, high seasons, and client attrition as well. So you're going to lose some, and they might not have a new one fill that spot right away. So those all are going to impact your ability to really plan ahead and to get a good feel for how much you're going to be making, especially in the first few years. Your marketing expenses are going to be higher at the start. Once you get a lot of those referrals down, it might go to nothing. So that's something to think about, that down the road, that might be an item that you can just cross right off your list. And so that folds again into these kind of networking and referral sources, taking people out to lunch or breakfast or dinner, and just spending the time doing that, having your business cards ready to go, and then the cost for setting aside time for vacation or sick time. So, questions at this point, because I've thrown a lot at you. Yes?
Can your 3,000 hours of supervision for your LPC be gained at the same time as your hours for the LMFT?
Yep.
Okay, so as long as you have a supervisor, that's both?
Yeah, and when you do your licensure paperwork through DSPS, there is a way, like, so actually the LPC, like if you find a supervisor that meets the requirements for an MFT supervisor, like he has an LMFT, which is my case, my supervisor is an LMFT, and he is approved to be a supervisor for LPCs as well. So you just have to fill out another form and write a letter that says why you're asking for them to supervise you for both licenses, and send along their resume. So, and it was just kind of a quick, yep, you're fine. Like they didn't even ask me a question. And in the letter, I just said, I'm going for dual license and I don't want to pay for 2 supervisors. And they never questioned it. So yeah, you can. You just have to make sure that person is either automatically licensed, like they're a psychologist, and they can do both, and that's perfect to go. Otherwise, if it's like a social worker, you'll have to ask DSPS for an exemption from their typical list of people, and hope that you get it. So, and that can take a little while. So finding a supervisor early is good, because it might be a couple weeks, it might be a month before you hear back. And if they say no, then you're right at the beginning again. So. Okay. But yes, you can double dip. So, LPCs have a 1 hour per week requirement, or as I mentioned, MFTs have 1 hour per 10 client sessions. So typically the MFT would need to be seen more often, so it works out fine. You still end up seeing the same amount. And of course, if you don't have 10 clients a week, then you do still have to do that hour of supervision. And most supervisors I know are pretty cool about, if you have 2 clients, they're not going to charge you full rate to come in for an hour. But you got to find a cool supervisor. So. All right. So there's the business part of the business. And I have a blog that I started that outlines a lot of this process and links to a lot of websites that'll help, like the Small Business Association has a great checklist of how to set things up, doing your paperwork, incorporating. So incorporating means that you're filing as like an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation. It's $130 for the paperwork. You just have to make sure that the name that you're going to use hasn't been used by anybody else, that they'll search that for free. So yeah, I think it was $130 when I applied. You can just run it with your own identity, your own social security number. I recommend not doing that because what incorporating does is it puts the liability on the company. So for me, I run Opus Therapy LLC. So if anybody were to sue, they could go after Opus Therapy. They don't get to go after my house, right? So it's a little bit of a level of protection that keeps you somewhat protected from direct harm. So I mentioned general and professional liability already. Getting set up with some of the services that you have to pay for so that when your client comes in, you're ready. Some of that might be a scheduling software so that you can get everybody lined up. Doing billing, how are you going to go about that? How are you going to collect invoices? Are you going to send out? Are you going to have them pay at the time that they come in? Are you going to have online payment ability? All of that stuff are things to think about. Telehealth, if you want to do any telecounseling, there are programs out there that you can buy or do a subscription to based on like how many times you're going to use it. There's a cost to that, but you don't want to ever use Skype or anything like that because it's not HIPAA compliant. So you need to make sure, and there are plenty out there that are HIPAA compliant, so you want to just make sure that you find something that's going to cover you for confidentiality reasons. And then finding a physical location. Again, we talked a little bit about, think about the clients that you're going to serve. Can they handle going up steps, or do you need something that has an elevator? Are you going to need to be on a bus line? Are you going to need to be near some other type of service? If you're doing a holistic group, or maybe you're working with a massage therapist as well, are you going to be like close to that person if you're doing a lot of referrals back and forth? Does it make sense to kind of come together and share resources, things like that? Do you want it right by your house, or do you want it really far from your house? So all of those things are things to think about. And again, it'll have a little bit to do with what moves you. If you go into a building and you're like, oh, this is not me, find a different one if you can. Sometimes because of cost, we end up in one location that isn't ideal, but then once we build up, we know that we're going to move somewhere else, and that's absolutely okay. But another part of the business, of course, is going to be setting up your computer, getting a fax set up, being able to do printing, having access to the internet if you need it, and then setting up your office and getting a coffee pot that's really reliable. And there are many more. So marketing materials, you want to have business cards ready for when you see your first client so you can give them your contact information. Any flyers that you want to do, things that might advertise groups that you have, or just give a little bit more information about what services you offer, what type of therapy you offer, if you take insurance. Putting up a website. I was really surprised, and this might be a generational difference, but when I've gone to the AAMFT conferences, every time that I've gone to a private practice session and seminar, they all say, put together a website. Like, only 10% of counselors have a website. I was like, what? They're like free. So it just kind of blew my mind. And they said, counselors who have a nice website, they've shown that they actually get more traffic and more clientele. So that's something to think about. Put some money into a website. And again, at the start, it might be a little bare bones. And as you make a little bit more money, you can upgrade and hire someone to fancy it up a bit. And any advertising you might want to do, you know, if you're working with the LGBT group specifically, you might want to throw some money to get into the outreach handbook, things like that, where again you're targeting specifically to the population you want to work with. Finding that supervisor, getting that contract set up, figuring out your fees for private pay clients. So even if you do plan to take insurance, which we'll cover that a little bit later too, there will always be clients who say, I'd rather just pay out of pocket. And usually that's for confidentiality reasons. They don't want their insurance to know that they're being seen, and or they don't want their insurance to be able to get their records. So setting up a way to track expenses and income. It could be an Excel spreadsheet. It could be a bigger program that does it for you. And just thinking about how am I going to evaluate what's working and how am I going to work that into doing improvements down the road, and how often am I going to do that, and what do I need to do that. So thinking ahead to even that part, because your business plan is going to want to include that reflective thinking of what's been working, what's been bringing clients in, and not just reflective of how good am I as a therapist, but for the business, like, am I doing what needs to be done? These are the recent numbers that I have found and was told at an AMFT conference that I went to in New Mexico, is that for MFTs, and everything that I've seen says that MFTs make a little bit more than LPCs. I don't know if that's the case in Wisconsin, and I don't know why that's the case. Nobody has been able to answer that for me, and yet they say, man, they typically make a little bit more, like 48 instead of 46. So, you know, it's marginal in the difference. So I just went ahead and put the MFT ones down since I knew them. And so the typical range for an MFT is between 30 and 80,000. The median is 48 to 52, and this would be for private practice. And of course, again, if you wanted to see that 25 clients a week, there's potential for making much, much more money. So a lot of it depends on what price range are you going to go for? Are you working with a population that can afford to dish out a lot of money? And are you going to work yourself to the bone to do it? Some people thrive on, I'll see 30 clients a week, and I say, what? When are you doing anything else then besides doing like filing paperwork and then also marketing and doing everything else? And people make it happen. So that again is going to go with what you see as your future. Are you the type of person who wants to just work all the time and you find great source of joy and sense of worth out of that? Do it. If it's healthy, go for it. One thing you can do is look at Psychology Today. They have a therapist finder online. You can look around at the geographic area where you plan on settling down and putting your practice in and seeing what are the ranges. In Madison, I've seen everything from 70 an hour to over 200 an hour. There seems to be no rhyme or reason. I think part of it is whatever you post your rates at will sometimes be impacted by, if you take insurance, what the insurance company will work out to reimburse you with. And typically those people who I've seen and who I've talked to that charge over 200 say, well, out-of-pocket clients, we don't charge that too. That's just our listed rack rate like you see in a hotel. One thing to think about, and I have seen this, I've heard this, I have been a victim to this because I undervalued myself, is do not start too low at what you will take for clients. I think it's a common trap to fall into where since we're working for hours, there's that franticness to like, oh my God, I need all of these hours. And so yes, I'll take clients for free. Yes, I'll take clients for $10 a session or $20 a session. And while you get your hours built up really well, you're also living in severe poverty. So, you can't cover your bills. You're zeroing out all the time. And so if you have a big shiny nest egg that you can live off of for a couple of years while you're building your practice, and you can afford to say, I'm going to see a ton of clients for free, sweet. Social justice loves you. So, and it might not work out if you don't have that big nest egg sitting there that you can just pick off of as you're working towards your hours. In Madison, so when I set my rates, I kind of set out like a call out to people in the organization that I'm a member of, so WIMT, the Wisconsin Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. I posted on the American Association site, and I talked to a lot of people who were kind of recent graduates who I knew went into private practice to say, hey, I know you have a training license, what do you set your rates at? And fairly consistently, people said between 75 and 85 with a training license was fair. It did not undercut other therapists in the area, which is something you want to be very aware of. Like, you don't want to start saying, I'll see clients for $30, and meanwhile the therapist at door down, who has 10 years of experience and has put a ton of money into it, now they don't get any clients because you're underselling. So those are things too to think about, like being a fair player and also being comfortable with what you're advertising your rates at. So one thing I did, and this was something my supervisor recommended, is the clients that I was seeing as an intern, I could take with me. And that's something, if you're going to intern at a private practice, to ask your supervisor, can I take my clients with me or do they stay with the practice? At mine, I could take all of my clients with me when I went into private practice. And so he said what he recommends and what I did do is that for clients who wished to continue with me, they could see me at 70 an hour. For new clients who came in, they were at 85. And a big part of that reason is because you're not paying to market to those clients that you brought with you. They're already there. They're going to be instant income. So, and the clients that I worked with that I knew, like, this person hasn't had a job for like a year. That's why they've been seeing an intern. Like, they can't afford to be anything. I did do one for free that I said, I'll keep seeing you until the new interns start, and then I'm handing you off. And they were totally cool with that. And a couple people I kept at 20 and just said, I'm willing to do 20, but we need to reassess in like 10 weeks or 5 weeks. And so there was a limited time where then that was built in that we could then talk to them about, okay, it's been 5 weeks, and we said that we would reassess, is 20 still comfortable for you? Can you afford any additional? Otherwise, those conversations get awkward. It's like, suddenly 8 weeks in and you're like, yeah, so I kind of want you to pay more. There's not an opening for that. So create that opening beforehand to kind of prevent ishiness later.
I have a question.
Yes.
So with any sliding scale like that, do you recommend having that conversation, like with any person you reduce the price of your sessions for?
As far as
Like
being able to do that for 5 sessions or so?
Yeah, or like giving them like, okay, for 5 sessions, we're gonna do, 20, and then we'll reassess. Like, is that because I've never heard of doing that before, and yeah, so is that something that you felt comfortable talking with clients about?
Yeah, and that's something that you, like, as a private practice, since you will be, it's an exchange of money, having that conversation is going to need to be comfortable for you. It might not be at first, but ways down, it'll become really natural and not, like, I was surprised actually how not big of a deal it was for me. But yes, anyone who comes in, if they say beforehand, I really can't afford 85, there's what figure is comfortable for you? And if they say, well, I could do 20, and it's like, no, I can't do 20, or, maybe I'm okay to do 20 for 4 or 5 sessions, but I can't do that long forever.
Okay.
So, I'm comfortable doing that now. After 5 sessions, I was thinking more around 45, but we can talk about that after the sessions. So, and just letting them know ahead of time, because the last thing you want to do is establish a really great therapeutic relationship and have a lot of trust, and then be like, yeah, you can't afford me now, and because that's just a horrible feeling. So.
And then I have 2 more. The next one is, do you advertise on your website that you do work on a sliding scale? Okay. And then the last question, if they say, yeah, after 4 sessions I can't do 20, so it would be ethical then to refer them to someone else? If they were like, I respect you wanting more money, I should go to somebody else, like what would you do with
Yeah, and that's a tough call because, and that's where you're gonna wanna really consult with your supervisor too on what they feel is good. So my take is, if you have that conversation with them right up front and you're incredibly transparent about it and you say, I'll do 20, but just so you know, I can only do it for about 5 sessions. I have bills to pay, and just let them know, like, I'm on my own here. And most people are very sensitive to that and they're super cool. But then being able to say, on session 5, we're gonna need to reassess, so just know that this is coming. And if we can't find something that works for both of us, I might need to refer you out then, and just being really open about that again, because I would have a problem personally with saying, okay, I'm gonna refer you because someone can't afford to pay, because you never know, down the way things might change and then they might go to full rate, but just really being aware, or maybe saying, I know you can't afford more than this, but maybe we can go every 3 weeks now, or every 2 weeks, so that that spot can be filled with someone who can also pay a little bit more. So, and that's the really hard balance between being a business owner and running a business, and having that kind of that therapeutic responsibility to your client, to not abandon your client. And that's typically too why I love knowing that we have interns right next door who are seeing clients for free, because if anybody gets to that point where it's like, I still can't, then it's okay, we have free interns here. I know where some of the other interns are in town, I can refer them to those areas too. So it's really nice to know, like, where's the counselor at department sending their students? Because a lot of times they end up in places where they can do a lower, well, there's this place they can do 40, there's this place they can do a really deep sliding scale. And just having those ready. So, it's tough. So, and there are ways to get yourself fired, but that's also tough. So, yeah. Insurance is, so here's where I messed up, and I'm just gonna say this right up front. Everyone that I have talked to who does private practice and who has been in the field for 5 years or more has repeatedly said, everyone will pay, you'll get out of pay, private pay people, you don't need insurance, insurance is a hassle. Most people we know, like, they want to get off insurance panels because there's such a drag, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, that's really hard for me to believe, but okay. And so, yeah, every single person who contacts me, the first question is, what insurance do you take? Do you take insurance? I don't take insurance, but I do have a sliding scale. Well, I really need someone who does insurance, and click. And it's like, I might be able to go lower than your copay, but that conversation isn't even allowed to be had. So, and I think, I've spoken with a few people about this. One of the thoughts is maybe because of the marketplace now, where everybody has to have insurance, everybody wants to use their insurance. So I think that's a big part of it. But it's just something to stay aware of. And with a training license, it is all but impossible to get on an insurance panel, with the exceptions of like Medicaid, you can get on with a training license, which also has a lot of paperwork to it. But my understanding is once you get used to the paperwork, it actually is pretty quick. If you take a lot of Medicaid patients, if you only take a couple of clients who are on Medicaid, it might take you a little longer for the paperwork just because you don't get as comfortable with doing it on a regular basis. I've talked to a few people who said they were able to get on employee assistance programs with a training license. The ones that I applied to said no, that I needed 2 years post-license experience to get on that, so I'm not sure how they got on it. If you work under a bigger agency, a lot of times you can get paneled. Like if you work at Journey, you might be on under an insurance panel, so you might be able to accept Dean or Physicians Plus or something at Journey. However, at your private practice, it doesn't come with you. So even if you can accept insurance at a part-time job that you have, You don't get to take that with you to your private practice. Even though you're the same person, you're doing the same stuff, insurance is nope. So, so some of the things about insurance, it's difficult to get paneled. The reimbursement rates for insurance are set, so you kind of get what you get. There might be times where it'll adjust, but you don't get control over how that adjusts. In private practice, you can raise your rates if you need to, right? So if at the beginning of the year you're going to bump everyone up $10, then that's a conversation you get to have in October and tell your clients, you know, in 2017, I'm raising my rates, and this is what it's going to be. With insurance, you are a little bit more at their mercy, so you don't get to adjust your rates. Sometimes the payment dates can be really sporadic. Some insurance carriers are really good at giving you your reimbursement right away. Others kind of wait and clump it, and so 4 months later, suddenly you get one big paycheck. And there's paperwork to think about. The confidentiality piece comes in where the insurance company can access client records if they need to, if they do an audit, and they can limit you to the number of sessions. So you might not be able to see a client for 2 years, even if they need it for 2 years. You might get 14 sessions or 20 sessions. So that's something to think about too. And on the flip side, it can be a great source of getting clients. If you are on a panel and you are listed as a provider with the insurance companies, people will come in. So one alternative to private practice that I'll throw out there is finding a group practice. And group practices are organized in very different ways. There's multiple different structures that group practices will go with. Some just have this umbrella group practice. Everybody pitches into the kitty that pays the internet, the printing, all that good stuff. Maybe everybody pitches in some money that pays for a scheduler, the front desk, or a biller. So some private practices are like that, where you pay in a bit of money, but you're still an independent therapist, and they don't really have any say over how you run your business. You're just sharing resources. Other ones employ as an employee, and so you might have some benefits, and you're also then expected to attend certain meetings, or you might get access to trainings, things like that. A lot of them still have a very flexible work schedule. You can kind of choose your hours, and they'll just plunk clients in as they are available. A fee split, so you might get paid hourly based off the clients that you see. There might be a salary where you just get, here's what we're going to pay you, with the understanding that you'll see at least 10 clients a week or so. Fee split is typically like a 30-70 or a 40-60, where the client comes in, they see you, their insurance is billed, so maybe it's $200 that their insurance reimburses. 60% of that comes to you, so you get 120. 40% goes to the private practice, so they get 80. And again, that kind of helps cover all the bills for them, and then shared resources. And so it's kind of a convenience fee, almost an administrative fee. So a lot of those are, again, negotiated within the practice. It can be, like I'd say, the caseload, if it's more independently operated, then you still build your own caseload. Otherwise, sometimes if they have a scheduler or someone that will just go out and bring clients in, and they just pull clients and plunk them in for you, great. As far as making changes, there might be a leadership team that decides, like, okay, we're gonna get new furniture, and this is what we're gonna do, versus, hey, everybody, we're gonna get new furniture, what would you like to see? And so having a bit of a say. Again, kind of thinking about the brand, your own brand, and thinking about, are you a fit for the group? Because typically a group practice is still going to interview you no matter what the structure is. So even if you are a completely autonomous business person that is just sharing their resources, they will still be able to talk with you and interview you and see what kind of clients are you going to be bringing in. If you're working with people with anger issues and their clients and other therapists there specialize in trauma and sexual abuse, they might not want your clients to be right next door to their clients. And so thinking about some things like that, are you a good fit for this group? And so being able to kind of find a group that works to your needs as well, making that work for you. So again, possible perks, trainings, time off, supervision. There's more people, so you don't have that sense of isolation. So some ideas that could make you more successful. Part of it is having a regular job and seeing clients part-time, and that comes with that sense of being nimble. I had hoped to just do private practice full-time, dead on, straight out, all the time. And because it is so variable and unpredictable, and my husband is also self-employed, and so with 2 unpredictable salaries, it was just a little too stressful. And I wasn't getting a whole lot of hours towards my licensure. So, you know, when you're making $20 a session, and at the end of the week, you're going, well, I made $120 this week. I'm like, woohoo, can't live on that. So that's when I kind of thought about, well, maybe I'll find a part-time job. So, and Ambrose opened up at a 0.85. So that works out really well because I still can see clients and not get super burned out. So it allows me to kind of keep my private practice open and continue offering workshops through it, which is kind of how I'm shifting my focus right now. Is I have a pet grief support group that I'll do. There's other like women's sexuality group that I'm going to be running again. So still maintaining my specialization and getting my name out there and being public and getting people to know my name and kind of so building up that like instant, oh yeah, there was that therapist who did that thing, and what was her name again? Trying to get that community built is going to make it so much easier than when I can add more hours back to my practice and bring more people in. So kind of keeping that open as an always available opportunity. So plus I don't have to pay for my supervision over there, so that's pretty nice too. So it cut down on a lot of expenses that I had as a trainee, and yet, so when I get my license and I don't have to pay for supervision and I have a private practice more full-time, that takes a huge chunk of money back into my pocket. So another idea is working in a group or sharing an office. I have my office, and then I have another therapist who rents it back from me. So during times when she has clients, so she pays me $10 an hour for sessions she does, that cuts my rent in half. So that's a nice way to cut some costs as well. And we each, share each other's books and stuff like that. If you're doing insurance and you have a lot of billing stuff like down the road, you might want to outsource that part of it because it can take up a long time to do billing for paperwork and insurance on top of writing your case notes and doing everything else. So that tends to be, when I talk to people, they almost always say, pay a little bit extra to have someone else handle, like talking to the insurance companies and getting all of that figured out, because it's a huge time saver. Getting on insurance panels down the road, mixing it up, trying to keep it fresh and new for you. Again, it's kind of the great thing with the private practice is you can specialize, and if you burn out and you realize it's just not who I want to work with anymore, you can shift gears and you can start marketing towards a different population. You can start working your way into other areas and have that chance to really transition over. So, so being able to, again, kind of get physically in front of people, writing, even if it's, I'm writing a book review for my state organization, hey, now your name's in front of a couple hundred other therapists. So anything like that, doing a blog, go ahead and get started on a blog right away and start building a history and building up some information that clients can go and say, oh, this is what she writes about this topic. Like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. She sounds like she really knows what she's doing. That's another good way to do it. Joining consultation groups. If you have a group of therapists that are in your building, or your colleagues from your internship, and you say, I just have a lot of cases that are kind of weird, and I want some extra ideas. I want to hear what other people are doing. Consultation groups are great for that. They are typically free, and because you have a flexible schedule, a lot of times people will do a midday, stuff like that. So, and keep taking classes, of course. So as far as what you can do right now in whatever stage you're in for second or third year, You can think about interning at a private practice and start looking around at some private practices that might offer internships. You would want to try to line it up with someone who works with a population that you're interested in. It doesn't mean that you have to specialize in the same exact population that your supervisor specializes in or that the private practice specializes in, but you should at least be open to working with that population.
How do you convince a private practice that they benefit from having an intern?
That's a great question. So trying to get people in private practice to say, yes, I'll take an intern. So I could offer a few ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had to do that myself because Whitewater set me up with Jay. So people who I know who have a supervisor credential, right? Because you can get, I know through the MFT group, through AMFT, you can be an approved supervisor. So you can start by looking at who has supervisor credentials in the area and runs a private practice, because you know that they've already kind of done that work to take on an intern. Sometimes the thing that's missing is having a space for you to see clients. That is where I find people getting hung up, because like a lot of people who go through online programs for MFTs or for counseling, they get to that point where they want to do their internship and they cannot find supervisors who will take them, even if they have supervising credentials. And a lot of times it's just because like they don't have a room for someone to see. So if you have a space that you already have procured and you can say, I can see clients here, I just really need you to be my supervisor and be able to do case supervision with me, that's something you can broach with them, but you would have to check with your professional organization's ethics too to make sure it would be okay to not have that supervisor physically on site, because some places you would want to have them in the building. So that's something that you would have to check in with them. So I mentioned too, starting a blog about your approach and experience. So back when I was thinking about doing private practice, and I went to a seminar on it because I'm a conference junkie, and I asked the presenter, I said, when should I start? I know I want to do this. He talked about getting a website, hey, get a LinkedIn profile, start building all of this stuff up. It's incredibly beneficial as a business owner. And I said, when should I do that? When should I get a website? When should I start putting my LinkedIn thing? And he's like, right now. Don't wait. I'm like, do it right now. I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, I'm still like 2 years out from graduating. He's like, doesn't matter. Do it right now. So I'm like, okay. So you can do that right now. You can at least start thinking about what would I want to call it? Do I want to name it my own name? Do I want to have a catchy name? What might the logo look like? What am I envisioning? It takes 2 seconds to pop up a Facebook business page. I created a business page about 1.5 years ago and just didn't publish it. So I had it up and I could move articles and do writings about kind of what I thought about stuff, so that when I was ready, there was already a fairly decent amount of content on the page ready to go. And linking to a blog, again, in whatever way, shape, or form that looks like. Focus on a specialty. When I interviewed here with Don Norman, who's since retired, when I interviewed with him, I asked, what's one thing that you would recommend to someone who's starting in this profession, getting into college? And he said, figure out what you want to specialize in and focus everything on that. So every paper that you write, all the research stuff that you do, be able to conceptualize, okay, I have my trauma class, how would I work with the population of my choice with trauma? How would I work with this population if they have AODA? Because they're all going to intersect. So thinking about that intersectionality and how your specialization is going to fit within that is just a really interesting way of learning this material and making it immediately applicable. And I did switch at some point. I kind of shifted my focus a little bit, and because some of it I liked pet grief, so my trauma class was on losing pet, and my research project was on open relationships and online infidelity. So it still kind of took a little bit of flexibility, but I always tried to keep it focused on who do I want to work with in my private practice. So, join the professional organization that is aligned to your goals. So not just like AMFT is for marriage and family therapists, like, yeah, that's great. But there's also a million other interest organizations out there. So thinking about, you know, there's professional organizations that are just for trauma. There's professional organizations for sex therapists that set their own standards. So ASECT is the one for sexuality educators and therapists and counselors. And they have their own certification requirements. You know, art therapy, if you want to do that, they have their own certification requirements. But, you know, and so in addition to your professional organization, which exists to protect your practice, so they're going to make sure your license is still able to be defended. That's what your professional organization does, despite whatever other things they have their hands in. That's their primary goal. There's also those specialty organizations, which are going to be where you find your real niche, and you're going to be able to learn from other practitioners who specialize with that clientele and really grow in how you are a therapist and understand the needs of the clients that you're really trying to draw in. Attend conferences. Look into agencies that will provide loan forgiveness. I did not know about loan forgiveness until I was graduating. Which is kind of a bummer because I didn't take any loans out. So I was like, had I known they could be forgiven, I would have taken out loans instead of putting it against my house. And there are a few things out there. There are some organizations that have specific qualifiers that if you work in them for 2 years, you get your loans forgiven, up to like $40,000. If you work for a nonprofit for a certain number of years and make continuous payments towards your student loans while you're working there, they'll, at one point, they just swoop, all of it goes away. So look into things like that too, because those positions, even if you do those positions part-time while you're starting your private practice, they could work towards that loan forgiveness. So, it's pretty sweet. Yep, and so pretty much I've said all of this already. My blog is here. I will give my PowerPoint to Justin, and you can give it to people however you want. But it has a few more resources. Like I said, it links to some of the business side of things, some other possible routes that you want to look into. And I also have a list of some different books if you want to like really look at it step by step and see what other people are saying about building a private practice. Those are there for you. And voila. So I have my card up here if anybody wants to just grab a business card, and then you don't have to write all this down. You're welcome to do that. But any other questions? I know we are right at time, so I don't want to hold you here if you need to fly. But if there are any other questions, let me know. Again, it was very content heavy, so I tried to get as much as I could for you guys to think about, knowing that hopefully you have a luxury of a little bit of time yet before you need to go set up an office and start hanging your shingle. So, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of being physically out in front of people and figuring out who those referrals are and networking so that you can network out and just keep building that. So, and it's a lot of no's and a lot of interesting opportunities that can look really shiny, and you have to think about, is this shiny thing actually going to lead me where I want to go? So, because it can be exciting to think about, oh yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that presentation with this person. I'd be in front of so many people. I'm like, what's the presentation on? It's about grief and, you know, terminal illnesses. Like, do you know anything about that? Yeah, I know enough. Do you want to do it? No, I won't do it. You know, like, just stop. So, because that's what your name is going to get attached to. So be careful about what you say yes to. All right. Yeah.
Will you say that you started going to conferences your first year in the program?
Yeah, if you're not signed up as a student, if you don't have a student membership to like either ACA or AMFT or any other organization, holy cow, do that now. Like, it is so inexpensive to get a membership to some of these organizations. And I found too, like once you have membership into it, you can access a lot of their libraries and stuff like that and just start downloading resources like mad. So, and you can get on different discussion boards, and it's a great place to get resources. So like people come to you. Sometimes you'll get journals, you'll get magazines. It just keeps you really abreast of like what's going on in the field. So, and conferences are dirt cheap as a student. It's nuts. Like now, not being a student, it like makes me teary-eyed to think about how much money it's going to take to do the same things that I did as a student. So, yeah, definitely worth it. I've been to a lot of conferences. And so, Sam and I are actually both on the board for the Wisconsin division of the AAMFT. And so being on the board as well, we get access to attending the state conferences for free. And so, you know, if you were to join as a board position or the conference as a conference committee member, you might get a discount on top of that. So there are a bunch of different ways too to kind of get involved at the organization's board level to get further discounts. So, and then you really can tap into what's going on in the profession and bring that back to the department too, which is really beneficial. You know, knowing that you don't have to, you can now get your license in less than 2 years. That requirement isn't there anymore, and it used to always be there, and that just changed. So now if you get all your hours in a year and a half, you can get your license. So, and that's something we know because, you know, I went to the DSPS meetings and I went to the board meetings and all this other stuff, and it's still not caught on every area in like the legislative pages. So people go on thinking, oh good, I can get my license, and see that it still says in not less than 2 years, and then they go, wait a minute, I thought that changed. And it's like, yes, we can say with confidence it has changed. They've just been really slow at updating everything. So, but just knowing a lot of that stuff, and you know, like MFT's got their diagnosing rates stripped away in Texas. You know, it's like this, the license isn't as strong as we would like. You know, counseling LPCs and LMFTs, like the licenses are always under threat. So that's what your national organization is going to help you do. Psychologists go to school for a long time, pay a lot of money, and it kind of rubs them the wrong way sometimes when they see that, you know, we can diagnose. So it gets under attack. So that's where I am. Well, if you guys are good, I'm good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.